This spot I'm standing in right now is going to be the home for our new hot tub that's coming. One great thing about the delivery is that they will actually wire it into the hot tub and they will fill it up. They'll get the chemicals correct. However, the one thing that I have to do is I have to wire in a 6-gauge wire from my outer box here that has a 50 amp GFCI outlet. So I have to get that cable running out, have it partially in conduit so that they can bring the hot tub in, wire it in the rest of the way. So today I'm going to wire in that 6-gauge wire into that. First thing I'm going to do is take out this knockout on the bottom. Now you can see it. You always shut off the power to there. So I went out, even though I knew it was off already, I went in the breaker box and double checked that the power was off. So first step is I'm going to pull out this knockout on the bottom here, and I've lifted it up a little bit so you can see where it is. I'm using a 1-inch pipe. So I've knocked it out to the 1-inch section. So I'm going to take that out the rest of the way. So I bought a piece for the 1-inch conduit to go up through the hole, and then another piece to screw onto it. But if you look, that piece is friggin' huge. So what I did is I took the piece that was just like that, and I took my hacksaw and cut it off. So basically it will still connect on here, but it won't impede my ability. All right, so now that we've got the knockout out of the way and I've shaved this down, now you may have a different size box. The box that I used on the last hot tub that I installed was much bigger than this, so I didn't have to worry about shaving the top off this, but for this one I did. So what I'm gonna do is just put the threaded part up through the bottom. I'm going to actually pop my breaker out of the way here, pop this up from the bottom and screw it in. So now the next thing we're going to do, I'm going to be running it through conduit, but I want to get everything prepared and then fish it through each piece of conduit. If you've ever dealt with 6-gauge wire, it's kind of a pain because it's pretty stiff. Also, this plastic coating that they have on the outside is kind of tender, really, for what it is. So another thing I'm going to do, because I'm on concrete that's kind of gritty, I'm going to lay down a moving blanket just to have this sitting on, because I don't want to scratch through the outer stuff of this or step on it or slip and then ruin $120 worth of wire. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to strip this outer casing off this wire, and you want to be real careful with this stuff. I don't like the way that I'm actually going to start it with my razor blade and then grab it with some pliers. You got to be careful not to nick any of the insulation on the inner wire, because if you do, it comes back to haunt you later because of the amount of juice that's running through these. So I'm only going to use this about as far as I would strip the wire. Then I'm going to use pliers possibly. Well, I think I can do this without it. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look back and see, when I put my breaker back in, how this looks. With these breakers, they've got a little hook here that hooks on this little plastic and then pushes up into the pieces to bring the power to it, if I can see correctly. What I'm wanting to look at is, once I get in here kind of running my wires, so I'll want to come out and be able to get to everywhere, which I will be able to. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to strip the ends of these wires, and I'm going to take my razor blade and gently work my way around the edge. I don't want to, this kind of pressing it into it, not actually like kind of cutting, but just using the tension of pushing it in. I don't want to cut any of the wires underneath. I'm going to use these just to gently kind of go around it and make sure that it's loosened up from the wire. And then pulling that off. So now we're going to do that to the other wires as well, the other two. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the cords up, the cable up through the box. And I'm going to kind of do that gently, trying not to scuff up the wire as it goes through. And what I did is after I cut this, I did take a little file and kind of smooth off those edges. So now what we're going to do, the ground will go over onto the ground bus there, but first we're going to put in the regular wires. So, okay, so I'm going to loosen these up. I'm going to check my black wire here first to make sure it's not too long, and I'm thinking it might be too long, so I stick it in. Oh, first I gotta loosen it up a lot more. If you look down there, you can see how that is. Also, your red and your black, your load wires, they're gonna go on the outside. I'm gonna do black. The white, you can see it's a different colored little lug in there. And then I'll do red on this side. All right, so my two loads are gonna go on the outside. You can see where it says load, charge, and that's gonna be neutral. That's gonna be my white. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to, this is actually going to go in like this. So I'll have my black on this side, and I'm going to double check and make sure that it goes in and doesn't have anything sticking out. Okay, so that covers it there. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten this one up. And I'm going to use my strip gauge and take some off that as well.
What is a strip gauge?
Strip gauge is on the side. Strip gauge is actually a little piece on the side. It tells you how long the wire should be so that you can gauge it off of that. So that way your wire is not too long. And if you've ever dealt with 6-gauge wire, it's a lot of fun because it's super stiff. Okay, so now we're going to trim off this red wire as well. Okay, now comes the fun part of putting the breaker back in, just because of the way it sits in there. That is not easy to wrestle that in, that's for sure. Now I've got to hook up my ground. So I'm going to use some pliers to help me get it into the hole back in here. And I'm going to hold it with the pliers while I tighten it up. Okay, now it's going to be time to start fishing on some of the conduit. All right, so these wires right here, you say probably, hey, can these be exposed? Yes, because they're still in their casing and they're also going to be in the conduit. So I'm going to be sliding the conduit on from the other side. So now what I'm going to do is actually cut the lengths of conduit that I'm going to need. So what I'm going to do is straighten my wires out here, making sure my stuff is still in there correctly. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be coming down to a piece of conduit going like this. So now what I need to do is measure the distance between this piece of conduit where it would connect up in and this piece of conduit where it would connect down in. So So I'm going to take my measuring tape, and this will go almost all the way up to the top inside here. So as I do that, I can put it roughly looking at about 9 1/4 for a piece of straight conduit that I'm going to use. So our measurement was roughly 9 1/4, so I marked it at roughly 9 1/4. I'm going to use my little cutters here to do this. If you don't have these cutters make life a lot easier and they're not that expensive. But if you don't have these, you can use a hacksaw. But these usually give you a real nice, straight, clean cut. Makes it easy. Now, what I'm going to do is, this is going to be my first piece coming down. So then I'm going to fish it over top of this wire. I'm going to try to kind of take some of the curls out here as I'm doing this. Again, trying not to scratch up this wire too much. Of course, it's going to curl right back up. You'd think it'd be easy to pull a smaller wire through a little bit bigger piece of conduit, but you start doing this stuff with long pieces, it's not very pleasant. So now, as I get closer, I'm going to push this up inside, but I'm not going to glue it because when the guys come, they have to inspect everything, which is good, so it's kind of a double check on everything. But then they may need to manipulate stuff, so we're going to leave it loose, and then once we get it all the where it needs to be, when they've got their length of wire, I'll go back and pop it out real quick and glue it all. Next piece we're going to put on is the elbow. Now we are going to do a straight piece. So I'm going to wait until they get here to do my next piece, which will be a straight piece. I've got several corners. I've also got several connectors if we need them to kind of match up to where they need to wire it in and everything. So really my next step would be to put this panel on right here, but they've got to inspect it anyway, so I'm just going to leave it up here. We're just going to go ahead and shut that. We're going to have them check it out, make sure it's all up to snuff and what it needs to be. All right, so we've got everything set up for them to come hook up the hot tub, and pretty simple process there. Remember, always consult a professional when you're doing electricity, and remember, doing things yourself allows you to save money, and it also allows you to be free. See you in the next video.